Hello everyone and welcome to the Shadow Realm. Today I'm going to showcase my first place DDD deck profile. I was playtesting with this version of the deck for a while and I'm really happy with the inclusion of the small board package because it boosted the consistency of the deck by a lot. Also don't worry about the Divine King 0 raids because this list doesn't include him at all. Friendly reminder before we start to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Now we're going to start things off with the triple copies of DD Griffon. Every single effect of this card is really incredible, especially the effect that can special summon itself from the hand, and when special summoned from the graveyard you can search for any DD card. Also his scale effect is really powerful, especially in the grind game because it allows you to boost one of your monsters by at least 500 attack, and by destroying itself we can retrieve it back with the effect of DD Thomas. Meaning that if we open the gate we can easily search Copernicus, send Lamia and special summon her, and then we can easily go into Gilgamesh and then scale Thomas and Griffon. Now moving on, we're also playing triple copies of DD's Wild Slime. This card is still one of the best extenders that you can have, especially if you happen to open one starter and access to Griffon. Also in many scenarios it allows you to banish it from the graveyard in order to special summon another body on the field so that you can easily go into Gilgamesh. It also comes up really often in the grind game because it allows you to special summon another big body on the field and easily trigger Ragnarok or any of your fusion monsters. Now moving on to one of the best starters, we're playing triple copies of DD Savant Kepler. This card is really amazing because it allows you to search any dark contract that you need, and its secondary effect might come up in the grind game because it allows you to get back any of your extra deck monsters back into the extra deck and then summon them again. This way, for example, you can trigger the effect of Ragnarok and special summon another monster back to the field. Also being a high scale allows you to pendulum summon any big monster that you have in the extra deck. Now moving on to the actual best starter, we're playing triple copies of DD Savant Copernicus. There are two amazing things about this card because it allows you to fully send DD card that you need on summon, and then, because it's a level 4, it allows you to easily go for exist plays. Also keep in mind that the secondary effect to prevent you from taking damage can come up in many scenarios, especially going into time. Also keep in mind that this card is a pseudo 1 card starter. Now moving on to the high level 1-offs, we're playing a single copy of DD Savant Thomas, one copy of DD Vice Typhoon, and one copy of Oblivion King Ragnarok. Each and every one of these cards are really important for the deck. Keep in mind that if you hard open the Ragnarok, you can easily use him as an extender, especially if you get interrupted. Also DD Savant Thomas allows you to have an amazing grind game by putting back in your hand any pendulum monster that you have in the extra deck. Now let's move on to the low level 1-offs. We're playing a single copy of DD Necroslime, one copy of DD Lamia, and one copy of DD Orthos. You could also try to fit a second copy of DD Orthos, but during the tournament today I didn't miss it at all. You have ways to get it back to the hand, so you don't actually need the second copy. As for Lamia, the single copy is really enough because you can easily send her to the graveyard with the effect of Copernicus or Tel. I've also reduced the copies of Necroslime because in this version we don't play any Allure of Darkness, so we're always gonna have it in rotation. And let's move on to our Handtrap lineup. We're playing triple copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring because it's a really versatile Handtrap, especially in this format. And in simplified game sets, it can really hurt your opponent. We're also playing double copies of Skullmeister. The really cool thing about this card is it can easily deal with your opponent's DP, the Eldritch Engine, and it also pairs up really well with the next card. For the spice of the deck, we're playing triple copies of Small World, and for the bridge of this card, we're playing a single copy of Archfiend Eccentric. DD can be a very powerful deck, especially if we have the pieces that we need, and by banishing any fiend from the hand and banishing Eccentric from the deck, you can easily search for any DD monster. Also keep in mind that this card is not a brick at all because it also allows you to deal with your opponent's back row. Although many lists try to achieve the 1-card combo, this list can perform almost every time the 2-card combo since you can search any missing pieces that you need. Now let me show you some neat interactions with the Small World. Let's say for example you have Small World and the Skullmeister in your hand. You can easily activate Small World, revealing the Skullmeister, and then banishing from your deck one copy of Archfiend Eccentric. Keep in mind that you banish them face down. Now you can search for any missing pieces that you need, having access to all the DD monsters. Also if you happen to open the Archfiend Eccentric in your hand, alongside Small World, you can reveal the Eccentric, banish the Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, and then you can search 3 of the DD monsters. In this instance you can search for DD Orthos because they share the same defense. You can also search for Copernicus or you can search for Kepler. So even in the worst scenario you have access to some of the best cards this archetype has access to. Some people are trying to play the map or Allure, but this card sadly doesn't provide you with the ways to search for any missing pieces that you need. So this card essentially fixes any problem with consistency. Also moving forward, you can see many more players trying to pivot in this card instead. Now moving on to the rest of the spells in the deck, we're playing a single copy of Patent License because this card allows us to get any resource that we have either in the extra deck or in the graveyard, while it can also help us win in time and lock our opponent from their core mechanics. And for the rest of the standard cards, we're playing triple copies of Dark Contract of the Gate. This card is the starters of the deck that allow us to get any missing pieces that we need, while it also acts as another interruption for Machina when we have it on the field, and it's essentially the 1-card combo. Moving on to the last contract, we're playing a single copy of Dark Contract with the Swamp King, so we can easily establish our board. We're also playing a single copy of Gold by the Grave, so we can easily deal with our opponent's DP or their Scythe. Also an amazing starter for the deck is the copy of 1-for-1. It's even more amazing if we can send for Coast Necroslime on DD Vice Typhoon. Now let's move on to the power card of the deck. We're playing triple copies of Forbidden Droplet. Now I know that this card might be out of reach for many people, but it's a really powerful card that allows you to deal with your opponent's DPE, Scythe and the Brave Engine. Also keep in mind that this deck doesn't require more than 2 cards to combo off, and you also benefit from having certain cards in the graveyard. If you don't have access to this card, you can play Chalice instead, but keep in mind that you might not have the same results. You could also replace this card with triple copies of Ghost Bell, so you can prevent your opponent from establishing their board. You could also consider playing triple copies of Chaos Hunter that synergizes really well with Small World. Keep in mind that if you have droplets and you activate for example Small World, going second you can send it for cost alongside a monster or a trap so you can deal with your opponent's threats. And you can also send cards from the hand that you want to revive back with the effect of Genghis or Ragnarok. And let's move on to the trap lineup. We're playing triple copies of Infinite Impermanence. With so many decks in this format that trying to play Hulk, you can easily use it to disrupt your opponent or at least trade for your opponent's Baron negate. And it's also really versatile, either going first or second, because it can easily provide another effect negate. And if you manage to disrupt your opponent, you can deal with your opponent's Scythe. So I highly recommend you to run this card. Now moving on to the last card in the main deck, we're playing a single copy of Triple D Headhunt. This card is essentially Snatch Steal that can steal your opponent's monster and make it a Triple D if it's summoned from the extra deck. Now let's move on to the extra deck. We're of course playing triple copies of Abyss King Gilgamesh. In most of your combos you at least use 2 copies, and you want to have at least 1 copy for the follow-up. Also, if this card remains on the field and your opponent for some reason doesn't read the effect, you can easily special summon any Triple D monster from the extra deck. I really wish we had at least 1 Link 3 monster that had a relevant effect, but that's a story for another day. Now let's move on to the fusion lineup. We're playing a single copy of Oracle King Dark. This card allows you to get life points on time, and it also provides a level 7 body that you can use Lamia to synchro summon into Siegfried. This is essentially the only flex spot of the deck, and you can choose to play whatever card you want, but summoning this card comes up really often. Now let's move on to the rest of the fusion lineup. We're playing a single copy of the High Flame King Genghis and the double copies of the Small King Genghis. In most scenarios, you want to use all these cards in your starting board, especially if you want to go into the High King Caesar. Also, High Flame King Genghis allows you to play really well against Timber, or going second against back row boards. And let's move on to the Synchro lineup. We're playing a single copy of Triple D Cursed King Siegfried and 1 copy of Baron de Fleur. Both of these cards are really essential and part of your ending board, and they allow you to play through multiple interruptions. If you open decent, you can easily make Baron and isolate yourself from getting the period. Sadly, this card is now really expensive, but it's quite mandatory in the deck. But if you really need a budget alternative, you can easily play the Bright King Armageddon. This card protects your monsters from getting targeted, and if your opponent happens to play a Pendulum strategy, you can easily make them lose their board. Other than that, you can choose to play another fusion monster if you don't have access to Baron, and even include the Deberfament for another way to High King Caesar. Speaking of which, we're playing a single copy of Triple D Wave King Caesar, 1 copy of Triple D Wave King High Caesar, and a single copy of Tell. All of these cards are essential for your combo, especially Triple D Wave King Caesar that protects your combo from getting Nibiru. In this version, we don't play Baphomet, so we can't make it before the 5th summon. Moving on to the rest of the XYZ, we're playing a single copy of Kali Yuga that's a complete powerhouse, especially against the back row matchups. Alternatively, you can choose to play a copy of Zeus, but in some scenarios you might be locked only to DD monsters, so you might not be able to make the Zeus. The only drawback with Kali Yuga is that it shutdowns your own card as well, but you could also use him to make a 3-material Machina. And speaking of the boss daddy of the archetype, we're of course including double copies of Deus King Doom Machina. This card is extremely powerful and can suck up your opponent's monster by destroying a dark contract or detaching 2 materials, and you can overlay this card on top of any Triple D monster that you have. Also, during your standby phase, you can put it on scale, and if you have Ragnarok in the other scale, you can easily special summon Ragnarok, and then Ragnarok is going to revive any monster from the grave. Also, being a scale 10 means that you can easily special summon either Thomas or Ragnarok from the extra deck. Now let's move on to the side deck. For the Psyche One-offs, we're playing a single copy of Red Reboot, 1 copy of the contract with Eternal Darkness, 1 copy of the contract with Errors. Errors and Red Reboot are cards that we side mainly for the back row matchups and can easily shut down your opponent's skill tree. As for the contract with Eternal Darkness, it's an amazing power card that no one is expecting and can protect your board from getting targeted from spells and traps, while also preventing your opponent from tributing or using monsters on the field for like Seize, Synchro and Fusion materials. And since not many people read this card correctly, it can completely shut down boards that heavily rely on Synchro, Fusion and Exceed summoning. It's an extremely powerful card, especially against the Sorcerer matchup, while also completely shutting down the Flanders matchup from having access to their core mechanic. Now moving on, we're also playing triple copies of Twin Twisters. I can see the argument for playing Cosmic Cyclone instead, but in many scenarios, when your opponent has Scythe, they also have it protected with the effect of the Griffon Rider. So we essentially side this card in for the heavy back row matchups, or matchups that want to use their cards, specifically in the main phase, like Prankits or Sandol Invoked. Also in most scenarios, we benefit from sending a card to the graveyard as well. And for the last back row hated cards, we're playing a single copy of Harpy's Feather Duster and double copies of Lightning Storm. In my opinion, this is the perfect ratio, because you don't have to max out on the hard ones per turn cards, while also having the versatility of Lightning Storm to deal with monsters as well. This card is extremely powerful against the Trap Brigade matchup, because they usually don't have any spell or trap negate. And it's also extremely powerful against most of the rogue matchups of that form. Now if you don't have many back row decks in your locals, you can choose to play more Handtraps instead. Now moving on, we're also playing triple copies of Nibiru the Primal Being. Initially I thought of playing triple copies of Droll instead, because this card alone in this format is not as powerful as it was before. But if you happen to open this card alongside another Handtrap, for example a copy of Imperm that will play in the main deck, you can essentially deal with any combo deck. But if you feel that Nibiru is not as powerful by itself, you can choose to play another card, for example a copy of Droll. But since I was expecting many rock strategies, I think Nibiru was a fine choice. And the last card in the side deck is triple copies of Lancia. Lancia is extremely good in this format, especially against the Phantom Knights, the Flanderies, the Citadel Invoked and many other decks. This is easily one of the best cards that you can have in your side deck. Arguably, if you know that your locals play decks that rely heavily on banishing, you can choose to main deck Lancia instead. Also in the future, I might consider playing Cross and Designator in the side deck as well, just to ensure that when we're going first, we can solidify our chances of winning. And that's going to essentially wrap up today's deck profile. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, let me know in the comments down below. I really had a blast playing this deck, and I'm looking forward to fine-tune it even more. Also, if you want to see more TDD videos, let me know in the comments down below. Also, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and if you want to support the channel in any way, shape or form, you can check the links in the description below. Also consider joining my Discord server, you can find the link there as well. Until next time, hope you all stay safe, and I will see you in the Shadow Realm.